Did anybody else smell that stench, or is it just me?
300 heads turned. Nobody moved. The black janitor stopped pushing her cart, mop in hand, eyes down.
You smell like a sewer rat, girl. Like the projects crawled in with you.
Her voice stayed soft.
I just finished my shift, sir.
He laughed loud enough for the chandeliers to hear it.
I'm Janitor. I don't care. You're fired. Drag your stink out before my guests start gagging!
A senator stared into her wine. A waiter folded a napkin. The CEO in the custom tuxedo had no idea. By midnight, his career, his name, and his entire empire would be dust. Oh, buckle up. Because 90 minutes before this, nobody in that room knew who she really was. Nobody. 90 minutes earlier, the woman in the gray uniform walked through the service entrance of the Rosewood Imperial Hotel. Her name was Simone Parker. She punched a time card under that name. The temp agency that placed her tonight had no idea who she really was. Her natural hair was pulled into a low bun. No makeup, no earrings, only a thin gold band on her right hand. That ring had belonged to her mother. Her mother had been a hotel cleaner for 31 years. She died at 54, lungs full of bleach fumes and industrial wax. Simone wore the ring every day she was alive. The staff locker room smelled like ammonia and burnt coffee. A fluorescent tube above the sink buzzed and flickered like it was trying to die. Simone hung up her beat-up coat. She slid into the uniform like it fit her. Because once, a long time ago, it had. In the kitchen corridor, an older Hispanic woman named Rosa was struggling with a tray of crystal stemware. Her thin arms shook under the weight. Simone walked over without a word and took half the load. "Gracias, mija," Rosa whispered. "De nada," Simone whispered back. They carried it together down the hall. A young bellhop passed her, carrying luggage and shoes that had holes worn through the soles. Simone slipped a folded $20 bill into his free hand. She didn't break stride. She didn't wait for a thank you. She just kept walking. That was who she was when nobody important was watching. The Rosewood Imperial was 42 stories of old money Manhattan luxury. Gold leaf ceilings, marble columns, crystal chandeliers the size of small cars. Tonight, the grand ballroom had been booked for the 25th anniversary gala of Meridian Capital Group. $500 a plate, 320 guests. Every chair filled with money. The official cause was inner-city literacy. Nobody in the room actually cared about inner-city literacy. The real cause was Preston Caldwell's victory lap. Because in 72 hours, the CEO of Meridian Capital was about to close the biggest deal of his life. A private equity firm called Halcyon Capital Partners was buying his company for $1.5 billion. Preston had been telling everyone within earshot that he was about to become a billionaire. He had no idea who actually owned Halcyon. Almost nobody did. The owner refused board photographs. She didn't do interviews. The financial world only knew her by her initials. Preston Caldwell swept into the ballroom at exactly 8 o'clock. Custom Brioni tuxedo. A wife on his arm who was 20 years younger and 3 Botox cycles past natural. He kissed the air beside Senator Margaret Whitfield's cheek. He waved at a hedge fund buddy whose Patek Philippe winked under the chandelier. He clapped a passing donor on the back hard enough to make the man cough. Then, loud enough for 2 passing waiters to hear, he muttered to his wife. "They sent the diversity hires again. I told the agency last year. White, female, presentable. How hard is it? The two waiters glanced at each other. They kept walking. They said nothing. In American ballrooms like this, silence was a survival skill. Down a service corridor near the kitchen, Simone Parker pulled out her phone. There was one message waiting. It was from Charles Sterling, the General Counsel of Halcyon Capital Partners. Final documents are sealed, signing Monday at 9. Are you sure you want to do the walkthrough tonight? She typed back without hesitation. Always. You can read a balance sheet. You can't read a man's soul from a balance sheet. She pocketed the phone. She picked up her mop bucket, and she pushed it through the swinging double doors into the grand ballroom. The smell hit her first. Magnolia centerpieces, aged cognac, the clink of silver against bone china, the hum of 300 wealthy people who hadn't yet noticed she existed. Simone Parker had spent her entire life learning how to be invisible inside rooms like this. Tonight, she was going to use that invisibility for the last time. In 45 minutes, she would learn everything she needed to know about the man who owned this gala. In 46 minutes, that man was going to make the worst mistake of his life. 45 minutes into the gala, Simone Parker was emptying an ashtray on the edge of the ballroom when she heard the laughter break. A drunk hedge fund manager had been waving his bourbon glass while telling a story about his yacht. The glass slipped. It exploded across the marble, 3 feet from Preston Caldwell's polished shoes. Bourbon splattered the leg of his Brioni tuxedo. A few drops hit his sock. The drunk man stammered an apology. Preston waved it off with a tight smile. He turned and scanned the room for someone to clean it up. His eyes landed on Simone. She had already started walking toward the spill with her cart. That was her job. She knelt down. She pulled out a cloth. She began to soak up the bourbon. Preston stepped closer. He looked down at the top of her head. His nostrils flared, and then the smell hit him. It was nothing, really. A faint trace of the disinfectant she'd been using in the men's room. A whisper of sweat from a 6-hour shift. The ghost of cheap shampoo. The kind of smell every working person in America carries home at the end of a long day. To Preston Caldwell, it was a personal violation. Did anybody else smell that stench? Or is it just me? His voice cracked across the marble like a whip. 300 heads turned. Nobody moved. The black janitor stopped pushing her cart. Mop in hand, eyes down. You smell like a sewer rat, girl. Like the projects crawled in with you. She looked up. Her voice stayed soft. I just finished my shift, sir. He laughed loud enough for the chandeliers to hear it. I don't care. You're fired. Drag your stink out before my guests start gagging. A senator stared into her wine. A waiter folded a napkin. Nobody moved. Simone didn't argue. She didn't apologize. She didn't beg. She just kept picking up the broken glass. That somehow infuriated him more. Did you hear me, girl? I said you're fired. Look at me when I'm talking to you. She set down a shard of crystal on the tray. She looked up. Her face was perfectly calm. I heard you, sir. Then why are you still in my ballroom? Because there's glass on your floor, sir. Someone could get hurt. The simplicity of it landed in the room like a second slap. A woman 2 tables away covered her mouth. A young waiter near the bar froze in mid-pour. Even the string quartet had stopped playing. Preston's neck turned the color of raw meat. He pulled out his phone. He aimed it at her face. The flash went off, white and harsh. I'm sending this to the agency. By Monday morning, you won't be able to mop a gas station bathroom in this city. You understand me? Simone didn't answer. She picked up another piece of glass. "What's your name?" "Parker, sir." "Of course it is." He sneered the words. "Let me guess. Single mother, Section 8, 3 kids by 3 different men, all named after car brands." Somewhere in the back of the room, a man laughed. It was a small, ugly laugh. Then it was quickly smothered. That was the moment something shifted in Simone's eyes. It wasn't anger. Anger would have been easier. It was the look of a person making a final, quiet decision. The way a judge looks at a defendant right before she reads the sentence. She didn't say a word. She just kept cleaning. The narrator wants you to understand something about this room. There were 320 people in that ballroom. Senators, judges, CEOs, heirs to fortunes older than the state of California. Not one of them stood up. Not one of them said, "That's enough." They studied their wine. They folded their napkins. They pretended their phones had urgent messages. Wealth in America has many talents. The talent it has perfected most is the ability to look the other way. But there was one person in that room who couldn't. Her name was Catherine Bellamy, 26 years old, Afro-Latina, junior associate at Meridian Capital Group. The only woman of color at her table. She had been watching the whole thing with her hand frozen on her water glass. Her hand was shaking. Catherine stood up. She walked across the open floor in heels she couldn't afford on her salary. She knelt down next to Simone. She picked up a piece of broken glass. Preston turned on her like a dog turning on a deer. "Excuse me, Miss Bellamy, what exactly are you doing?" "I'm helping her, Mr. Caldwell." "You're embarrassing yourself." "I don't think I am, sir." The whole room had stopped breathing. Preston walked over. He stood above her. He smiled the way men like him smile when they are about to do something cruel and call it discipline. "Catherine, sweetheart, do you remember our conversation about partner track?" Catherine swallowed. "Yes, sir." "Do you remember me telling you that partner track requires judgment?" "Yes, sir." "Then I would suggest you go back to your table and remember your place. Before you do something your career can't survive." Catherine's hand was still shaking. She looked at Simone, and Simone, kneeling on the marble with broken glass in her palm, gave the smallest possible shake of her head. The message was quiet but clear. Don't. Don't burn your career for me. Not tonight. Not for this. Catherine's eyes filled. She nodded once. She stood up. She walked back to her table on legs that didn't quite work. She sat down. She put her napkin in her lap. She did not look up again for the rest of the evening. Preston turned back to the room with a satisfied smile. The string quartet, after a confused glance at their conductor, resumed playing. Conversations restarted, just a little too loud. Senator Whitfield laughed at something nobody had said. The gala swallowed the silence whole and pretended nothing had happened. That is how injustice survives in rooms like that one. Not because anybody approves of it, because everybody finds it slightly less expensive to forget. Preston walked back to his table. He took a long sip of his scotch. He told the joke about the diversity hire one more time. His wife laughed too hard. He had no idea he had just signed his own obituary. Down the service corridor, away from the music, Simone Parker washed her hands in a cracked porcelain sink. Cold water. No soap dispenser. The fluorescent light above the mirror buzzed and flickered. She looked at her own face in the smudged glass. She did not look angry. She looked patient. She pulled out her phone. She opened an encrypted note application. the same one her general counsel had set up for her 3 years ago, after the first time she had done one of these walkthroughs. She typed 3 words. Caldwell. Pattern. Confirmed. She saved the note. She locked the phone. She did not call Charles Sterling. She did not call her board. She did not call anyone, because the part of this evening that mattered had not happened yet. She would let Preston Caldwell finish writing his own ending. She splashed cold water on her face. She dried her hands on a rough paper towel. She picked up her mop bucket. Then she walked back into the ballroom. The string quartet had moved on to a Vivaldi piece. The dance floor was filling up. Preston Caldwell was holding court in front of 3 laughing donors. He saw her come back in. The smile fell off his face. "Are you still here?" he barked across the room. "Did I not just fire you?" Simone kept walking, slow, steady, toward a different spill. "Hey, I'm talking to you, girl!" She didn't look up, and somewhere outside the building, a black town car was already pulling up to the curb of the Rosewood Imperial Hotel. The man stepping out of it wore a tuxedo cut on Savile Row. He had a small enameled order pin on his lapel. He was 3 minutes late. He had no idea what he was about to walk into, but he was about to recognize the woman with the mop the moment he saw her face. And once he did, every silent guest in that ballroom was going to wish they had stood up when they had the chance. Preston Caldwell could not let it go. He should have. Any reasonable man would have. He had already humiliated her. He had already fired her. He had 300 witnesses to his power, his wealth, his ownership of the room. But Preston Caldwell was not a reasonable man. Preston Caldwell was a man who had never been told no by anyone he could not buy. So, when his hedge fund friend, the one with the Patek Philippe, came back from the coat check with a panicked look on his face, Preston saw an opportunity. Preston, my watch is gone." "What do you mean, gone?" "It was in my coat pocket. I took it off because it was catching on the cuff. 85,000. It's just gone." A small crowd was already forming. Preston's eyes lit up. He turned slowly toward the corner of the ballroom where Simone Parker was wiping down a cocktail table. "I think," he said, loud enough for the band to hear, "I know exactly where to look." He crossed the floor in 5 long strides. He grabbed Simone by the elbow, hard. "Come with me, now." She didn't resist. She didn't ask why. She set down her cloth and let him march her into the service corridor behind the kitchen. The corridor was narrow and yellow under fluorescent lights. The air smelled like fryer grease and bleach. A walk-in freezer hummed somewhere behind a metal door. 2 waiters, carrying empty trays, saw what was happening and immediately found other places to be. Preston pushed her against the wall. "Empty your pockets, right now." Simone's voice stayed quiet. "I'd like you to call hotel security, sir, and the police. I'm happy to be searched. By them." He laughed in her face. His breath was warm with scotch and contempt. "You don't get to make demands, girl. Not in my hotel. Not at my gala. I am the authority in this building. Empty your damn pockets." She didn't move, so he did it for her. He grabbed the strap of her cleaning apron and yanked it over her head. He dumped the contents on a stainless steel prep table. A cherry chapstick rolled across the metal. A small inhaler. $42 in folded bills, mostly singles. A laminated Metro card. A worn employee badge from a temp agency. And 1 photograph, black and white, creased at the edges. A young black woman in a hotel cleaner's uniform, smiling at the camera. Standing in front of the same Rosewood Imperial Hotel where they were standing now. The date stamped on the back was 1979. Preston picked it up. He glanced at it. "What is this, your welfare, Grandma?" He let it drop. He didn't even drop it on the table. He let it fall to the floor. And as he turned to face Simone, the polished tip of his Italian shoe came down on the corner of the photograph and ground it into the dirty tile. Something in Simone's chest went very, very still. She did not look at the photograph. She did not look at the shoe. She looked at his eyes, and she held them. "That was my mother, Mr. Caldwell." He didn't even flinch. "Then I guess we know where you learned to steal." He stepped closer, 6 inches from her face. He was a foot taller than her. He used every inch of it. "Listen to me very carefully, girl. I have friends at every immigration office in this state. I am going to make one phone call, and there is going to be a van waiting at the staff exit when your shift ends. Do you understand me?" Simone did not answer. "Confess, right now. Tell me where you hid the watch, and I will only have you fired. Stay silent, and I will have you deported by Tuesday. Are we clear?" Simone looked at him for a long moment, and then she did something that genuinely confused him. She smiled. It wasn't a big smile. It was small and tired and almost sad. The smile of a person who has just received final confirmation of something they were hoping not to be true. "Mr. Caldwell, there are 4 cameras in this corridor. 2 on the ceiling, 1 on the freezer door, 1 on the fire panel. They have been recording every word you have said. I hope, for your sake, you remember that." He looked up. He saw the cameras. He should have stopped. Any sane man would have stopped. He didn't. He grabbed her elbow again, harder this time, and dragged her back through the swinging double doors, out into the ballroom, out into the chandelier light and the string quartet and the 300 witnesses. He raised his voice to a shout. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to interrupt your evening, but it appears that we have a thief on the staff tonight." The Vivaldi piece dribbled to a stop. Every face in the room turned. Catherine Bellamy's hand flew to her mouth. "This woman," Preston announced, "was caught in the act of stealing a guest's $85,000 timepiece. I am now going to have her searched in front of all of you to set an example." A young hotel security guard named Gregory Moore had been standing by the side door. He stepped forward. His face had gone pale. "Mr. Caldwell, sir, I think we should call the actual police if there's been a theft." "Are you arguing with me, son?" "No, sir, I just—" "Then stand there and watch." Officer Moore looked at the floor. He did not move. He did not speak. That was the moment a side door opened and a different waiter walked in. He was carrying a small velvet box. He went straight to the hedge fund manager and whispered something. The hedge fund manager looked at the box. He opened it. He went the color of skim milk. He cleared his throat. Preston, buddy, listen, my wife she just texted me. She found it, the watch. It was in the glove box of the car. I must have taken it off when I was driving and—" He didn't finish the sentence. The whole ballroom turned back to look at Preston Caldwell. 320 pairs of eyes, senators, judges, heirs, waiting for the apology. Preston Caldwell did not apologize. He looked at Simone. He looked at the room. His jaw worked, once, twice, and then he said, loud and clear, the 7 words that ended his career. "Doesn't matter. People like her always steal something. The gasp that went through the ballroom was audible. A woman near the front actually said, "Oh my God." Someone else said, "Did he just say that?" A waiter near the wall pulled out his phone and started filming. Then another waiter, then a guest, then 6 guests, then 20. Simone Parker bent down slowly. She picked up the creased black and white photograph from the marble floor. She wiped the shoe print off the face of her mother with the pad of her thumb. Gently, like she was wiping a smudge off a child's cheek. She tucked the photograph carefully into the inside pocket of her uniform, where it would be safe. Then she stood up to her full 5 foot 4 inches, and she looked Preston Caldwell directly in the eye. The ballroom went so quiet you could hear the ice melting in the champagne buckets. "Mr. Caldwell," her voice was calm, "I am going to give you one chance." "One chance for what?" he sneered. "One chance to apologize, publicly, right now, to me, to Miss Bellamy, and to every member of staff in this building you have insulted tonight. One chance." He stared at her. He could not believe what he was hearing. Then he laughed. Loud and ugly and full of teeth. "You? You want me to apologize to you? Sweetheart, by Monday morning, you will be lucky if you are mopping floors in a Greyhound station." That laugh and those words were the last free breath of Preston Caldwell's adult life. He just didn't know it yet. Because at that exact second, the heavy double doors at the main entrance of the ballroom swung open, and a tall, silver-haired man in a Savile Row tuxedo stepped through. He scanned the room with the unhurried gravity of a man who had been kept waiting once, in 1987, and had never quite gotten over it. His eyes found the woman holding the mop. His face did not just change. It collapsed and reassembled into something like reverence. And he started walking toward her. "Oh my God! Stop!" Just picture you're standing in that ballroom right now. 300 people, phones already out. And he just said, "People like her," out loud. Like, what would you do? Because honestly, I don't know if I could just sit there. The man walking across the ballroom floor was 68 years old. His silver hair was combed back. His tuxedo had been hand-stitched on Savile Row in London. The small enameled pin on his lapel was the Order of the British Empire. His name was Lord Edmund Holloway, former United Nations Special Envoy, sitting member of the International Advisory Board of Halcyon Capital Partners. In 2019, his daughter had been dying of a rare cardiac condition. No insurance company in 2 countries would cover the surgery. A woman he had never met had quietly written a personal check for $1.2 million to a children's hospital in Boston. His daughter was now 24 years old. She was alive. She was a violinist. He would never, for the rest of his life, fail to bow to the woman who had paid for her heart. He stopped 3 feet from Simone Parker. He did not look at Preston Caldwell. He did not look at the 300 guests. He looked only at the woman holding the mop. And then, in front of a sitting United States Senator, in front of every wealthy face on the eastern seaboard, Lord Edmund Holloway bent at the waist into a full, formal bow. He held it. He held it long enough that a champagne glass somewhere in the back of the room slipped from somebody's hand and shattered on the floor. He held it long enough that the string quartet, which had just started playing again, stopped a second time and did not start again that night. He straightened up. His voice was clear and dry and old. "Madam Parker, forgive my lateness. The flight was delayed.
Had I been on time, I would never have permitted what I just walked into. Simone tilted her head slightly. Edmund, we've talked about the bowing. And I have told you, ma'am, that you may fire me whenever you like. Until you do, I will continue. The ballroom was a vacuum. 320 people holding their breath at the same time.
Senator Margaret Whitfield was the first one to figure it out. She set down her wine glass. She stood up from her table. She crossed the floor in a long charcoal gown and stopped beside Lord Holloway. She extended both her hands to Simone Parker. "Simone, my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't recognize you in the uniform." "Senator, how long have you been standing in this room?" "About 4 hours, ma'am." Senator Whitfield turned, slowly, until she was facing Preston Caldwell. Her voice carried the way only a senator's voice can carry. "Preston, do you have any idea who you have been screaming at for the last 45 minutes? Preston's face had gone the color of wet paper. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He tried to smile. "Margaret, there's been a misunderstanding. The watch, there was a theft. I was just... Answer the question, Preston." He couldn't. Simone Parker took one step forward. Just one. She did not raise her voice. She did not have to. "My name," she said, "is Simone Parker." She let it sit in the air. "I am the founder and majority owner of Halcyon Capital Partners. I personally hold a controlling interest of 51%. As of 9 o'clock Monday morning, that controlling interest will also include Meridian Capital Group, which means I will own this gala. I will own your company, and I will own your contract, Mr. Caldwell." She paused. "I came here tonight as a member of the cleaning staff. I do this with every company my firm acquires. I have done it for 19 years. I do it because you cannot read a man's soul from a balance sheet. And I do it because the truest measure of any leader in America is how he treats the people he believes cannot hurt him." She tilted her head. "Mr. Caldwell, congratulations. You just failed the audit." The word audit hit the ballroom like a stone hitting still water. Preston Caldwell's knees actually buckled. He caught the edge of a cocktail table just in time. A waiter near the wall, the same waiter who had filmed him earlier, lowered his phone slowly and crossed himself. Simone turned her head. She found Catherine Bellamy in the crowd. Catherine was crying, quietly. The dignified, contained kind of crying that doesn't ask to be noticed. "Ms. Bellamy." Catherine looked up. "On Monday morning, I would like to speak with you about the senior associate position that is about to open up at Meridian. I think you would be excellent in it." Catherine nodded. She could not speak. She just nodded and nodded. Simone turned back to Preston Caldwell. The man in the custom Brioni tuxedo had no power left in the room. He had no allies. He had no exit. 300 phones were filming him. A sitting senator was watching him. A British peer was standing 6 feet away with the expression of a man inspecting something that had crawled out of a drain. Preston Caldwell, billionaire in waiting, opened his mouth one more time. Nothing came out. Preston Caldwell finally found his voice. It came out wrong. Too high. Too fast. "Mrs. Parker, ma'am, listen to me. This is a complete misunderstanding. The watch. I was protecting the gala. I was protecting your investment. I had no way of knowing." "You had no way of knowing what, Mr. Caldwell?" That I was what?" He couldn't finish the sentence, because the only honest ending was that you were somebody. And even Preston Caldwell, drowning in his own ballroom, could not say that out loud. He tried a different tactic. He smiled, wide and oily.
You really had me going, ma'am. What a brilliant test. Bravo, truly. Now, why don't we step into my office, just the two of us, and we can— There is no office of yours anymore, Mr. Caldwell. The ballroom went still again. That was the moment the side door opened, and a fourth man walked into the room.
He was in his early 60s, bald, round wire glasses, a leather folio under one arm. He moved like a man who had spent 40 years in courtrooms and no longer felt the need to hurry. His name was Charles Sterling, General Counsel of Halcyon Capital Partners. He had been waiting in a town car at the curb of the Rosewood Imperial Hotel for the last 2 hours. He had been waiting because Simone Parker always sent the same text when she had seen enough. The text had come in at 9:43 p.m. It had said yes.
Charles Sterling crossed the floor and handed Simone a single sheet of paper. She glanced at it. She signed it with a pen he handed her. She handed it back. Sterling turned to Preston Caldwell.
Mr. Caldwell, my name is Charles Sterling. I am General Counsel for Halcyon Capital Partners. As of 40 minutes ago, the Meridian Capital Group Board of Directors held an emergency telephonic vote. The vote was unanimous. They are terminating you for cause, effective immediately, on the grounds of conduct materially damaging to the company's brand. This is your termination notice. I would suggest you take it. He held out the paper. Preston did not take it. You can't. There's a buyout. There's a $42 million parachute in my contract. I negotiated it myself. You can't. Section 8, Mr. Caldwell. Your golden parachute is void in the event of conduct, quote, materially damaging to the company brand or exposing it to civil or criminal liability, unquote. I imagine you signed it without reading carefully. Most men in your position do. That clause doesn't apply. It doesn't. There are 300 phones in this room, Mr. Caldwell. There are 4 cameras in the corridor behind the kitchen. We have you on record using a racial slur, threatening a federal civil rights violation, destroying personal property, and conducting an unlawful search of a hotel employee. Section 8 applies. Preston Caldwell, for the first time that night, looked like a man who understood his own situation. His eyes filled, not with shame, with self-pity. Please, please, I have a daughter. I have a mortgage. I have— Simone Parker spoke, quietly. Did Ms. Bellamy have a career, Mr. Caldwell? Did Rosa, the dishwasher you yelled at last Tuesday, have a family? Did my mother have lungs? He did not answer. Simone turned her head. Officer Moore. The young security guard who had failed her 30 minutes earlier stepped forward. His face was wet. He had been crying. He did not bother to hide it. Ma'am, please escort Mr. Caldwell off the premises. He is no longer a guest at this gala. He is no longer an employee of any company my firm owns. He is to leave through the staff exit, not the front. Yes, ma'am. Officer Moore put a hand on Preston Caldwell's elbow, the same elbow that 90 minutes ago had grabbed Simone in this same room. He did not squeeze. He did not need to. Preston tried, on his way out, to make eye contact with 3 different people he had called friends an hour earlier. His hedge fund buddy turned his back. The senator's wife studied her bracelet. His own wife, 20 years younger, found something fascinating in her clutch purse. The kingdom forgets a fallen king in less time than it takes to refill a champagne glass. The door closed behind him. For one long second, nobody in the ballroom moved. Then Simone turned to the staff lined up along the back wall. 23 working people. Cooks, waiters, janitors, bartenders, bellhops. "Everyone working tonight," she said, "will be paid quadruple your hourly rate for this shift. Personally. By me. Thank you for doing your jobs while these people forgot how to be people." Rosa, the dishwasher, sat down on the floor and cried into her apron. The string quartet, after a long pause, began to play again. Softly. A different piece. Something gentler. The thing about a viral video is that it does not care who you are on Monday. By 11:14 p.m. that same Saturday night, the first clip hit a social media app. It was a 14-second cut, Preston Caldwell saying, "People like her always steal something," filmed by the same waiter who had crossed himself. By midnight, the clip had 2 million views. By 6 a.m. Sunday, it had 18 million. By the time Preston Caldwell woke up in his Park Avenue penthouse to a hangover and a vibrating phone, the number was 31 million. By Monday morning, it was 38 million. And the New York Times had run the story above the fold with the headline, "Inside the Gala That Ended a Career." A producer from 60 Minutes called Halcyon's media office at 8:02 a.m. Monday. He was the fourth call. The first 3 had been from federal agencies. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission opened a formal inquiry into Meridian Capital Group on Tuesday morning. Halcyon, now the controlling owner, did not fight it. Halcyon opened its own files to the investigators. Halcyon paid for the legal representation of every former employee who wanted to speak to the EEOC. 11 came forward in the first week. 4 were black, 3 were Latino. 1 was a Sikh man who had been told, in writing, to lose the headwear or lose the office. 2 were women who had been groped at company retreats. 1 was a transgender associate who had been outed by Preston Caldwell to her own parents over a speakerphone in a conference room. Diane Wilson, the head of human resources at Meridian, had buried every single one of those complaints over the previous 6 years. When the federal subpoena landed on her desk on the Thursday, she flipped within 90 minutes. She handed over emails. She handed over voice recordings. She handed over a private Slack channel called The Back Room, where Preston and 3 other executives had been rating women on a 10-point scale. Halcyon fired Diane Wilson the day after she testified. The Industry HR Association revoked her certification a week later. She would never work in corporate human resources in the United States again. 4 federal discrimination lawsuits were filed against Meridian Capital Group in the first month. Halcyon, as the new owner, did not contest a single one. Charles Sterling settled all 4 within 60 days. The total payout came to $48 million. Simone Parker wrote the check personally. From her own foundation, not from the company. She did not want a single dollar of it coming out of the salaries of the people who still worked at Meridian. She published the terms of every settlement with the plaintiff's written permission in a single press release. The release was 3 pages long. It ended with one sentence. "The culture that produced these complaints is over." That release was reprinted in 23 newspapers. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office indicted Preston Caldwell on a Tuesday in March. The charges were 2 misdemeanors, false imprisonment and aggravated harassment. The trial lasted 4 days. The prosecution called Officer Gregory Moore. He testified that Preston Caldwell had ordered him to stand silent during an unlawful detention. He testified that he had failed in his duty. He testified that he was paying his own way through night classes to finish a criminal justice degree because of that failure. The prosecution called Catherine Bellamy. She testified about the "remember your place" conversation. She did not cry. She read from her own notes. The prosecution called Simone Parker last. She wore a charcoal suit. She did not bring lawyers into the courtroom with her. She walked to the witness stand alone. The prosecutor handed her a clear plastic evidence sleeve. Inside the sleeve was a creased black and white photograph from 1979. A young black woman in a hotel cleaner's uniform, smiling. "Mrs. Parker, can you identify the item in this evidence bag?" "Yes, that is a photograph of my mother, Eleanor Parker." How did this photograph come to be in the condition that it's in? The defendant ground it under his shoe in a service corridor of the Rosewood Imperial Hotel on the night of the gala. Why did you carry this photograph that night? Because my mother was a hotel cleaner for 31 years. She died at 54 from occupational lung disease. I carry her with me every time I do a walkthrough, to remember why I do them. The courtroom did not make a sound. The defense lawyer chose, on cross-examination, not to question her. The jury was out for 3 hours. The verdict was guilty on both counts. The judge was a 61-year-old black woman named Judge Yvonne Coleman. She had grown up in a Bronx housing project. Her own mother had worked nights as a nursing aide. Judge Coleman gave Preston Caldwell the maximum allowable sentence on both counts: 12 months in county jail, $250,000 in restitution to be divided among the 23 staff who had worked the gala that night, 500 hours of supervised community service at a literacy nonprofit in the Bronx to begin immediately upon his release. Before she read the sentence, she said one thing on the record. "Mr. Caldwell, I have read your sworn statement. I have read your character letters. I have read the statements from the people you harmed. I have one observation. Every defendant who comes through my court learns one truth in this building. There is no such thing as people like her. There are only people. And when you stop seeing that, the law eventually arrives to remind you." He left the courthouse through a side door. There were no friends waiting. 6 months into his sentence, the Wall Street Journal ran a follow-up piece. Halcyon Capital had instituted something it called the Parker Standard, a 5-point cultural audit that every company in its portfolio was now required to pass before any acquisition closed. The standard included undercover walkthroughs by board members, anonymous staff interviews, and a binding clause in every executive contract that voided golden parachutes upon documented bias. 3 other private equity firms announced they were adopting the same framework before the end of the year. Catherine Bellamy was promoted twice in 11 months. She was running Meridian's new Office of Workplace Dignity by Christmas. Rosa, the dishwasher, did not work at the Rosewood Imperial anymore. Her daughter, Isabella, was now a freshman at Columbia University, on a full scholarship paid for by the Parker Foundation. And the Rosewood Imperial Hotel, quietly, without a press release, raised the minimum wage of its entire cleaning staff by 35%. 1 year later, the grand ballroom of the Rosewood Imperial Hotel was full again. The chandeliers were the same. The marble floor was the same. The smell of magnolia centerpieces was the same. Almost nothing else was. The gala that night was not for Meridian Capital. It was not for any private equity firm. It was for the inaugural ceremony of something called the Parker Foundation Dignity Award. The award was given to working people: hotel cleaners, dishwashers, hospital orderlies, bus drivers, night shift security guards, the people whose names nobody ever bothered to learn. 300 guests filled the room. The dress code said black tie or work uniform. About half the room wore each. Simone Parker walked onto the stage in a dark green silk gown. Her hair was loose. The thin gold band that had belonged to her mother was on her right hand. She did not speak first. She handed the microphone to Catherine Bellamy. Catherine, now the head of the Office of Workplace Dignity at Meridian Capital, introduced the first 3 recipients. The third recipient was Officer Gregory Moore. He walked to the stage in his security uniform. He had finished his criminal justice degree. He was now training other hotel security officers in the lawful response to workplace discrimination. His program had been adopted by 14 hotels in the city. When Officer Moore accepted his award, he said only one sentence into the microphone. "The next time, I will speak. I promise you, I will speak." The room stood up. When Rosa walked to the stage to accept her own recognition, her daughter Isabella was beside her. Isabella was a sophomore at Columbia now. She was studying public health. She was going to be a doctor. Rosa cried into the microphone. She apologized for crying. 300 people told her, with their applause, that she did not need to apologize for anything ever again. Then, Simone Parker stepped to the microphone. She spoke for less than 4 minutes. She told them about her mother. Eleanor Parker, born in 1949 in rural Mississippi, died in 2003 in a public hospital in Boston. 31 years of mopping floors in hotels exactly like this one. Lungs full of industrial bleach, hands that by the end could not hold a coffee cup without shaking. She said that her mother had never been honored in any ballroom. She had only ever cleaned them. She said that she had built her career and her foundation and her firm around one simple test. I do not believe in second chances for the people who humiliate the powerless. I believe in real chances for the people who never knew anyone was watching, because someone is always watching. And usually, she is holding the mop. The room was on its feet again before she finished. A few miles away, in a small rented apartment in Phoenix, Arizona, a 59-year-old man was watching the live stream of the gala on a laptop. He was working as a junior accounting clerk at a regional firm. He was making $52,000 a year. His name was Preston Caldwell. He had served his 12 months. He had paid his restitution. He had completed his 500 community service hours teaching adult literacy in the Bronx. He had been required, as part of his sentence, to write a letter of apology to every person he had insulted on the night of the gala. Simone Parker had never replied to his letter. She had filed it in the same folder where she kept her mother's death certificate. His wife had divorced him 8 months into his sentence. His daughter, a junior in college, had legally changed her last name. He watched the broadcast all the way to the end. He did not turn it off when his name was not mentioned. He turned it off when Rosa's daughter Isabella said, on stage, that she wanted to start a foundation of her own someday, to pay for the medical bills of the parents of the kids who had grown up in apartments like hers. Then Preston Caldwell closed the laptop and sat in his small apartment in Phoenix and stared at the wall for a very long time. The world had moved on without him. The world was kinder for it. Oh my God. Imagine that's you in that ballroom. 300 people. Nobody moving. Would you stand up? Be real with me. Drop it in the comments. Smash that like, share with somebody who needs it, and subscribe. Next week, a black surgeon, a state trooper. You're not.